In this video, I'm going to find the series solution for y prime minus 3y is equal to 0. So let's make the assumption that our series solution looks like this. Y is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity a sub n x to the power n, which if we expand, is going to be a0 plus a1x plus a2 x square plus a3 x cube plus dot dot dot, and that's going to give me y prime. Okay, it's going to be just a termwise derivative, so a1 plus 2 a2x plus 3 a sub 3 x square plus 4 a sub 4 x cube plus dot dot dot, which turns out to be y prime is equal to summation n is equal to 1 to infinity n times a sub n times x to the power n minus 1. Now I can go ahead and plug in these values y prime and y into the original equation. So that's going to give me summation n is equal to 1 to infinity n times a sub n x to the power n minus 1 minus 3 times summation n is equal to 0 to infinity a sub n x to the power n is equal to 0. Now in the left summation, if I replace n by n plus 1, then I'm going to shift the indices, so it's going to be summation n is equal to 0 to infinity. So my n is going to be just n plus 1, and a sub n now is going to become a sub n plus 1 x to the power n minus 1. So n is n plus 1 now, minus 1 is just going to give you n. Now the next term doesn't really change. Summation n is equal to 0 to infinity a sub n x to the power n is equal to 0. Now you can see the indices are aligned for both the summations, and the power of x is the same for both the summations, that is x to the power n. Now we can combine them. Summation n is equal to 0 to infinity n plus 1 times a sub n plus 1 minus 3 times a sub n, all of it multiplied by x to the power n is equal to 0. Now if you collect the coefficients from both sides, collect the coefficients of x to the power n from both sides, you get that this coefficient is going to have to be 0. If you think of it as a polynomial on the left hand side, then the coefficients on the right hand side for the corresponding power of x should be the same, but on the right hand side you only have 0, so all the coefficients must be 0. So that tells me n plus 1 times a sub n plus 1 minus 3 times a sub n is equal to 0 for n is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, right? If I solve for a sub n plus 1, I get 3 a sub n over n plus 1. And remember here n is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and keeps going. Now let me go ahead and find some coefficients. So for n is equal to 0, what do I get? If my n is equal to 0, I get a sub 1, because 0 plus 1 is 1, is equal to 3 times a sub 0 over 1. For n is equal to 1, I get a sub 2 is equal to 3 times a sub 1 divided by 2. But I have a1 already, so 3 over 2 times a1 is 3 a sub 0 over 1, which I could write as 3 square times a sub 0 divided by 2 times 1 is kind of like 2 factorial, right? And I'm guessing here 3 to the power 1 times a sub 0 over 1 factorial. And I can try a few other values, so let me try those. These are the values I get. For n is equal to 2, a sub 3 is equal to 3 to the power 3 times a sub 0 over 3 factorial. Similarly, for a sub 4, we get 3 to the power 4 over 4 factorial times a sub 0. And for a sub 5, we get 3 to the power 5 over 5 factorial times a sub 0. In general, a sub n is 3 to the power n over n factorial times a sub 0. Now I can go ahead and plug in these coefficients a sub n into the equation. So remember, my equation was, or solution was this, right? Y is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity a sub n x to the power n. Now if I plug in the a sub n is equal to 0 to infinity, a sub n is going to be 3 to the power n over n factorial times a sub 0 times x to the power n. Now I could probably simplify it even further. Y is equal to a sub 0 is a constant, so we can just go ahead and move it outside. It doesn't have any dependency on n. So there's going to be summation n is equal to 0 to infinity 3 to the power n x to the power n. I could make it 3x to the power n divided by n factorial. Now if you look at this summation, by the way, this is nothing but e to the power 3x. So this is technically my series solution that I have been looking for this equation. But this is the same as y, or y of x, is equal to a sub 0 times e to the power 3x. I hope that this discussion was helpful. Thank you very much.